Hello everyone and welcome to Don't Get Lost in the Lost Tools of Writing. We're going to quickly buzz through some program information, tabbing, using and referencing your books, and some student helps, and then some extra resources. The program structure. For Lost Tools of Writing, it equips you with tools and resources to cultivate the discipline and creativity that mark effective writers and readers and thinkers, and for that matter. And that's right out of the teacher's manual. As Christians, we are also called to make God known. Thus, we need to be able to reach people where they are and persuasively explain our faith in a winsome manner. So it is a persuasive program that teaches us how to write well. And I have the example that a dear friend of mine has two children who are very different. One is a creative type who could write forever and not say much of anything. And the other is a very basic writer and struggles with getting a minimum word count in because she's so concise in her writing. And she said what the Lost Tools of Writing did for her daughters is the one, it gave her tools to expound upon what she wanted to say, and the other, it reined her in and gave her structure and the ability to have a more organized, thoughtful structure and content. So there are four features or four things that are included in your Lost Tools of Writing program. The first is online audio and video streaming. You can go online and watch every single lesson taught by the master teacher. The teacher's guide itself, which has a bunch of items in it, including the three parts of the introduction, which is the foundations of writing, the sequence and schedules, introduction of the lesson guides, a year at a glance, the lesson guides, and then several appendices. And we're going to talk more specifically about those appendices. There is also the student workbook that you should have, and then some external support. There is a LTW mentor Yahoo group, as well as the CRC apprenticeship group and workshops that they lead throughout the country. Lost Tools of Writing, or LTW, addresses the three universal writing challenges of coming up with ideas, putting those ideas into order, and then expressing those ideas appropriately. Within CC, we call those the invention, arrangement, and elocution. And in challenge A through 1, we designate a week for each of those. Not so much in one, I think. I think we do a paper a week or every other week in one. If you came up through CC and you were in Essentials, they called them brainstorming, or other writing programs that call them brainstorming, outlining, and then your final paper. This writing toolbox shows those 3 weeks and then the items that you're supposed to do within each 3 weeks. And don't worry about looking at this too closely now. What I want you to know is that there's, it's called the toolbox. Whoever created this document was making a play off the tool, and called the big power tools, the A&I chart, the outline, and the paper, because those are the documentations that you would turn in that week. The refining tools are the worksheets that help you get there. So I'll send you this. The nice thing about this is it has the page numbers and it has a step-by-step checklist. So feel free to use this in your homeschool if it helps you, but it's not an LTW resource, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. So I do want to address LTW across the challenge levels. So in challenge A, B, and 1, every worksheet, every time should be completed. A lot of students will get lazy, they will forget them. If they don't do them every single time, they will forget them. They will not be able to explain what they are. They will not master them. In challenge 2, it should be a year of a bridge, and the student will need coaching because they start doing papers that are not necessarily persuasive, but that they can still use this structure with. So when I was in college and I was learning the Lost Tools of Writing, we would have discussion posts that we had to do. And in every assignment we did, you could usually find something, 3 things that we were supposed to talk about. So what LTW did for me is I was able to find those 3 things, put an introduction and conclusion on there, and each of those 3 things were addressed in the middle, and I was very easily able to speak well, write eloquently, and do it quickly and easily. And still to this day, I did a presentation this weekend and I had no clue what I was going to ask the parents. But instead of saying, hey, I have a question for you, I said, hey, I have 3 questions for you, because I knew I had one. And apparently somewhere in my head, I figured I could come up with 2 more, and it just sounded better than asking just one question. Okay, so this next screen is my tabbing. This is my tabbing. Feel free to create your own. This is actually just for the student pages. And the reason I show you this is I tab with yellow tabs on the invention weeks, pink tabs with the arrangement weeks, purple tabs for the elocution week, and then blue tabs for the arrangement. And I stack the blue tabs on top of each other because once you learn a new outline, you don't have to use the other ones. However, if you are on arrangement 3, you have to do every worksheet that comes before that tab. So you would have to do everything before page 25. So you'd have to do comparison 1 on page 23. You would have to do the exordium on page 25, and the parallelism 1 on page 17. So using and referencing your book as a parent-teacher. If a student comes to you on Essay 6 and doesn't understand how to add in refutation, how would you help him? So in your student book, if you see that he's in Essay 6, you can go to yours, and under my tabbing, I have Essays 1 through 6 listed. You could go to Essay 6 and you could read through it, although it's a pretty hefty section. So actually, if you go to the back, one of the tabs is the simplified summaries. You could read through it. It's only a couple of paragraphs, and ideally you'd be able to understand it and help them. You also have your samples, again, one of the tabs on the parent list, and you would be able to read 2 samples, talk about it with your student, and analyze whether or not they understand that. I have another example here. What is antithesis and how do you help your student with it? It's the same thing. Try to figure out where it is, what essay it falls in, read the summary, look at the examples, and you should be able to help them. The big thing to remember, though, as you're helping your student is easy +1. You should be keeping your student wherever they can, with whatever they can do in each week, +1. You really do need to stay on top of your student at least well enough to know whether or not they are achieving each of the invention, arrangement, and elocution steps, so that you know whether or not they should be progressing, because they will be in class. We will be progressing all of the students, but if your student hasn't mastered something, they really should stick with that. So a parent needs to stay on top of things. If your student is struggling during an invention week, the 5 common topic page that I'm sending out will help you immensely. Basically, they are working on filling in their A&I chart, and they just need more information. They need more ideas. And we eventually learn a whole bunch of worksheets for each of the different 5 common topics. But to start with, if you have some of the 5 common topic questions, you'll be able to delve a little bit deeper into that. During the during the arrangement week, those are some of the harder concepts for the students to understand, although an exordium is really just an attention grabber. Amplification is really just your clincher. So your students probably know some of this stuff, you probably know some of the stuff, but following that process that we talked about in the last slide of the refutation, of going and looking at the lesson summary and then the examples, will help you. During the elocution week, your students will need help in their editing, adding in stylistic devices, and using the checklist. The tutor communication, I actually have a friend developed this form, and it is a complete persuasive essay checklist that includes IEW stylistic techniques as well as the LTW ones. And so we will talk about that at the end if we have a chance, but I will email that out to you. A few extra resources that I want to address. Number 1 is the errata pages. So I will be emailing those out after our meeting today, and the errata pages have little things in them like on the outlines, an asterisk means that you don't have to put that title there. You can just fill in the blank. So there are some asterisks that are in the wrong spot, or should be there that aren't there, or are there that shouldn't be there, and things like that. I get asked a lot about which worksheets I'd recommend or which pages to copy out of the Lost Tools Writing Student Book, and I would say none, because we want our students going to blank paper as soon as possible. Actually, we want them doing it in their minds, or on paper, or doing it wherever they can. So ideally, if they are being asked a question, they can think through that process internally. They can go to that worksheets. They can compare things internally. That is the goal. But if your student needs worksheets because they don't write well, because they need that structure, then that is a choice for your student. The final thing is grading. And I have a form that I will be emailing out. The form there's Lost Tools of Writing has recommendations in the teacher's manual of some ways to grade. The other option is just to use the checklists that are in the back of the student book and teacher's book, and provide 5 points for each checklist item. A big point that I have is if it's not on the checklist, you should not be grading it. That's my personal opinion, because if a student doesn't know what's expected of them, then you shouldn't be grading it, because they don't know that that's expected of them. Now, you could add things on the checklist like it must make sense, or it has to have a moral message, whatever you think that your student should be doing, or things that your student already knows how to do that you expect them to incorporate into it. The other expectation that I tell parents is that in challenge A and B, and ideally, and maybe even one, but definitely in A and B, you should be holding to the format. You really want to make sure that the student is saying for the first reason, for the second reason, using that enumeration in the intro and not in the conclusion. And the reason being is, in the rough draft, we want to be very formulaic in that, so that they get the thought process down. During the editing, you can change it and make it sound more interesting. They're probably already used to that if they've been in Essentials, where you can say the final reason, the most important reason, a second reason. And so you can make it sound better during that elocution phase, but definitely during the rough draft, it should hold to that. And that will actually help them when they get into debate, because then they will speak that way. They will start to say the first reason we believe that we should change this policy is because of this. The next reason we believe. And so it'll make it easier for the judges. It'll make it easier for their teammates to be able to keep track of where they're at, and as they're going back and forth between the sides. So after this meeting tonight, I will send you an email follow-up, as well as those files that I've mentioned. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, call me, text me, or set up an appointment for a curriculum consultation. If you have some special issues that you would like addressed one-on-one, as far as how does this work specifically in your home or your homeschool or with your student, feel free to set up a curriculum consultation with me. Otherwise, that is all I have for you. Have a great night.